To close out Higher Edge 2023, I have the honor of introducing our Commissioner of Higher Education, Dr. Harrison Keller. Dr. Keller became Commissioner just over 4 years ago, and it has been a pleasure working alongside him and the board as well to advance higher education across our great state to build a talent-strong Texas. Commissioner Keller joined the coordinating board with an incredible CV, and it's been a pleasure watching his vision come to life and to see the accomplishments that he and the team have all achieved. Join me, please, in welcoming Commissioner Harrison Keller for his State of Higher Education address.
Thank you. So thank you, Chairman Farias, for that kind introduction, and thank you for your visionary leadership of our board. I want to say thanks to all of our board members who joined us here, including Vice Chair Donna Williams, who was here earlier, Stacy Hawk, Emma Schwartz, Ashley Thomas, and of course this year's student representative, Cage Sawyers. And I continue to be so grateful for your dedication to our students and our institutions. Thank you. I also want to acknowledge all the regents, the trustees, chancellors, and presidents here today. Thank you for your service to your institutions, and I am so grateful for your partnership with us at the agency. So this year's conference has showcased important perspectives from leaders across higher education, from philanthropy, from industry, from government. I especially want to say thank you to Governor Abbott and to all of our speakers for sharing your insights. And of course, I'd like to say thank you to our sponsors. So your generosity enabled us to make this event bigger and better than ever before. So thank you. And finally, I want to take a moment to acknowledge our coordinating board team who made this event possible. So we aim to raise the bar this year for program and production, and it could not have happened without our dedicated team. Could you all help me thank our coordinating board team? Thank you. Again, thank you all. So as the chairman mentioned, so I've been Commissioner of Higher Education now just a little over 4 years. It seems a lot longer than that because it turns out commissioner years are a lot like dog years. So when I began this job in fall of 2019, there were so many things that were different. So at the time, Texas was merely the 10th largest economy in the world. And my pledge was to shift the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board from a traditional compliance and regulatory focused posture to being an agency that would set a new standard as a resource, as a partner, as an advocate for the students and for the institutions that we serve. And I got about 5 months on the job before our whole world changed. And for our colleges and universities, the global pandemic was the greatest disruption to their operations since the Second World War. So enrollments plummeted. They had multiple revenue streams collapse. And the faculty had to convert almost all the courses online in just a few weeks. Now, many of our students, our faculty, our staff, their families, they suffered losses of jobs, physical health, and even their loved ones. And the impact of those years will always be with us. But we came together, we adapted, we overcame, and now our state economy and higher education enrollments have been faster to recover than what we see in most states. And today, the Texas economy, which is now the 8th largest economy in the world, and Texas higher education are stronger than ever. Now, one of the most important drivers of our rapid success in higher education has been a clear sense of our goals. Now, when I was in my last job interview with Governor Abbott, one of the things we talked about was the need to update the state's higher education goals. So when the pandemic hit, that work became even more urgent because there were changes that were already underway in our economy that accelerated faster than anybody expected. So even as we were working together with public health experts, with policymakers, with institutional leaders to navigate the pandemic, then the coordinating board and our partners at the Texas Higher Education Foundation launched a project to develop a new higher education plan for Texas. And we consulted hundreds of Policymakers, community leaders, educators, employers across the state, we polled the Texas public, and we distilled a new vision in building a talent-strong Texas to ensure the state's future competitiveness through higher education. Now, our Talent-Strong Texas plan has three major components. First, we've expanded our target for educational attainment to at least 60% of our entire working age population to have a credential beyond a high school diploma by 2030. And second, we put down a marker that we only want to count credentials of value towards our goal of 550,000 degrees, certificates, and other credentials awarded every year. Texas is the first state to condition our goals for higher education on the value of credentials in the state economy, the first state. So we look into our data about our graduates' earnings and costs, and we ask whether a typical student would be better off financially after earning that credential. And if not, we don't want to count that credential towards our goals. Now, if we're going to make sure that our students can realize the value of their credentials, that also means that we have to be vigilant about student debt. So we set a target of 95% of our undergraduates completing with either no federal and state debt, or if they have debt, it should be debt that's manageable given the typical earnings for their credentials. And third, we set new goals for increasing private and sponsored research by at least $1 billion a year and increasing our production of research doctorates to at least 7,500 a year. Now, these are ambitious goals, and they're designed to keep Texas competitive into the future. If we're going to achieve our goals, that's going to require even closer collaborations across our colleges and university systems with K-12 schools, and especially with industry. So Texas can compete in terms of our talent and, as we were just discussing, in terms of our ability to work at the frontiers of knowledge, technology, and innovation. Now, this year, we've made incredible progress. We've had new resources, new state incentives, and expanded support for our students. And already this is translating in Texas in increased enrollments in every sector of higher education. So most notably, the 88th Texas Legislature made historic investments, more than $5 billion in our students and in our higher education institutions to advance our shared vision for building a talent-strong Texas. Now, one of the university's most important strategic investments was creating the Texas University Fund. And this endowment is going to increase the number of Texas institutions that can compete with leading national and global research universities, starting with nearly $4 billion investment that's designed to grow over time. The legislature also increased state support for research, development, and innovation in other ways, and that includes nearly $2 billion to make sure that Texas can compete in semiconductors, aerospace, and space technologies. We are actually the #1 state, as you'll see in the report, in terms of state support for R&D now. At the request of Governor Abbott, the legislature also invested and deployed meaningful support for college and career advising, especially for implementation of My Texas Future. Now, if y'all haven't already, you should browse that one-stop advising tool that we've developed in partnership with our tri-agency partners, with the Texas Education Agency, with the Texas Workforce Commission. Over the next few months, we're going to be releasing new features within My Texas Future, so students can explore potential career opportunities, they can find related higher ed programs, develop plans, and get connected. And especially next summer, we're going to launch the new Apply Texas within My Texas Future, and that'll streamline the college application process so even more Texans can unlock their potential through higher education. This legislature also made historic investments in our community colleges through the passage of House Bill 8, which fully funded the recommendations of the Commission on Community College Finance that was led by Woody Hunt. That legislation includes a completely new funding model where 95% of community colleges' formula funding is tied directly to student outcomes. It also includes new funding to stabilize small and rural serving colleges and more than 125% increase in financial aid for community college students, for academic and workforce programs. I'm so grateful for the hard work and the dedication of Representative Van Dever and Senator Creighton that resulted in unanimous final passage for House Bill 8. Now, I know we have some friends who've joined us from around the country, and so you may not have been following the community college finance work as closely. So you might think, well, they're completely overhauling community college finance. That'll take about another year of planning and data collection. That's not how we work in Texas, right? So because of the close partnerships that we have with our state policymakers, with my friend Ray Martinez and his team at the Texas Association of Community Colleges, with William Serrata of El Paso Community College, and with community college leaders across the state, and because of the hard work and dedication of our coordinating board team, House Bill 8 is in effect today. So that new outcomes-based funding system, this is not how public policy usually happens, right? That's really remarkable. And so that new outcomes-based community college finance system and all the rules that we've developed together, they're a model for the nation, not only in terms of policy innovation, but also for policy implementation through strong, trusted collaborations among policymakers, higher education leaders, and other stakeholders. Now, this session, the legislature also invested in another core responsibility for our agency as a steward of the combined educational and workforce data for the state. For years, as came up earlier this morning, we've been recognized for the scope of the data we've collected, but it's often been challenging to get at that data and to be able to use it to inform key decisions. So this was one of the key opportunities for Texas, actually, that I highlighted in my first State of Texas Higher Education address 4 years ago. And since then, we've been working with the Texas Higher Education Foundation, with state and national policymakers, philanthropies, institutions across the state in a transformational initiative to make that data readily accessible and useful. And now we've just completed the migration of all of our data into a more secure and modern cloud-based infrastructure. And what that's going to mean is it allows us to power new dashboards and new tools for institutional leaders, for policymakers, for the public, and to power new advising tools for our students. So we've already released the first round of public data tools on the website, and we've also just released new secure dashboards for institutions that includes detailed data about their enrollments and their graduations, transfer student profiles, and especially labor market outcomes. This work has been years in the making, and it's an incredible game changer, especially for our smaller institutions. I am so excited to see what we're going to be able to do all together with these powerful new resources so we can support our students in completing credentials of value more efficiently, more affordably, and identify and monitor regional and state workforce needs much more closely than we've ever been able to do before. Now, I could keep going about the legislative session. Those are just a few of the highlights of our work right now in Texas. And I want to thank Governor Abbott, I want to thank Lieutenant Governor Patrick, Speaker Phelan, and the entire Texas Legislature for their strong support for higher education. Texas higher education is leading the way on multiple fronts. State investments in research and development, community college finance, college and career advising, educational and workforce data, and more. And the nation's taking notice. So today, whenever you go to a National Higher Education Policy Conference, you expect to see a Texas institutional leader or a policymaker on the agenda. And I am so proud of what we've accomplished together in higher education policy here in Texas, despite historic challenges in only 4 years. Now, these historic policy reforms and the investments in higher education have come not a moment too soon, because the world and our economy and the pace of innovation continue to accelerate in directions that require more education, more credentials, and more innovation than ever before. And Texas higher education has to keep pace to meet our students, our employers, and our communities' changing needs and ensure that we stay competitive throughout the 21st century. So for context, as we heard, today there are more than 30 million Texans. We add about 1,100 new Texans, now maybe 1,300 new Texans every day. 5 of the 15 largest cities in the United States, 6 of the fastest growing cities are right here in Texas. We've recently hit a new record of more than 14 million jobs. And just last week, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, they released new data showing Texas' economy has expanded faster than the United States for the 4th quarter in a row. In fact, we've seen 24 consecutive months of job growth and continue to create more jobs than any other state. But we aren't just talking about the number of jobs. It's about what those jobs require, especially for good jobs. So Georgetown Center for Education and the Workforce, they project that about 62% of all the jobs in Texas will require education and training beyond a high school diploma by 2031. And that tracks with our goal that we've set in Talent Strong Texas for a 60% attainment rate by 2030. Now, the great news for our state, but a challenge for us in higher education, is it looks like those projections might actually be way too conservative. Right now, we have about the same number of jobs open in Texas that we have people looking for work, but most of those people don't have the credentials and the skills that align with what employers need. So our friends at the Texas Workforce Commission tell me that in contrast to what the Georgetown projections are, they're seeing more like 90% of net new jobs requiring educational and education beyond high school diplomas. More like 90% of net new jobs. So that means that Texas isn't just adding numbers of jobs. We're outperforming by attracting and adding good jobs. But today, only about half of our working age Texans have degrees or certificates beyond high school diplomas. And if we add in those short-term workforce credentials, that adds another about 6% or so to that estimate. According to the census, we still have nearly 4 million Texans who are working age, who have some college and no credential, and we have about 2 million who don't have high school diplomas or equivalencies. If employers can't keep pace with 21st century workforce demands by hiring Texans who have the knowledge and skills they need, they're going to have to look elsewhere for talent. Now, when I talk with Texas business leaders, many of them have shared 2 concerns with me. So first, employers will say they're genuinely happy with the technical capabilities of our graduates, but they're concerned about the long-term supply, especially in computer science and engineering, mathematics, data analysis, and other competitive fields. So as the vice president of One Texas Corporation told me, we could hire every engineering graduate from Texas A&M every year and still not have enough. That's our largest College of Engineering and just one Texas employer. So last year, in our public 4-year universities, we awarded just over 16,000 bachelor's degrees in engineering, computer and information sciences, and mathematics. And that's impressive. But to put those numbers in context, the most recent labor market data that we have suggests that right now, there are more than 213,000 Texas job postings that require a bachelor's degree in one of those fields. Now, the second concern that I often hear from employers is even though they feel like their new hires are highly intelligent and capable in terms of their technical training, they're not confident that the average college graduate is well prepared with other skills that they're going to need to succeed in the workforce. So particularly what we sometimes call employability skills or soft skills. And that feedback tracks with what we see in the national survey. So in general, employers strongly prefer graduates who have had internships and other work-based experiences. And that's where many of us learn to interact in a professional context. But today, across American public institutions, less than 40% of the students have had internships. And for first-generation college students, it's only 1 in 4 students. In Texas and across the country, Our economy is racing forward in directions that are going to require far greater skills, more education, more credentials for a good job than ever before. So we heard yesterday, one of the drivers has been advances in technology and in AI that are changing the nature of entry-level jobs, and as more and more routine tasks that don't require a lot of experience can be automated. Now, given the growing importance of higher education, especially for good jobs, and what we're hearing from our employers, how do we make sense of what we're seeing in public opinion? In that latest Gallup poll, only 36% of Americans said they had quite a lot or a great deal of confidence in higher education, an all-time low. Now, there's a lot of buzz about this. Personally, I think the general conclusion that Americans are losing faith in college, I think that's been exaggerated. The demand for our most competitive programs and institutions has never been greater. And when you survey most current and potential college students, they'll say they believe a college education is as important or more important than it was 20 years ago. What worries me is what you see when you look more deeply into these polls. So, for example, in the same study, where 79% of Americans who are not currently enrolled in higher education say a degree is as or more important than it was 2 decades ago, only 29% said that they thought a quality and affordable education after high school was accessible to all or most of the people who want it. So I think the picture that emerges is not that our employers or current or potential students don't value higher education. Most of them do. But employers are raising important flags about the quantity and the quality of our graduates that we have to pay attention to. The issue that I feel like is even more critical for the future of higher education is that even when current and potential students recognize the value of higher education, they aren't confident that a quality higher education is accessible and affordable, that it's worth the cost and worth the risk. And I think those kinds of concerns could be behind a significant part of what we're seeing in the decline in public confidence. These concerns are also reasonable. When we look into our data, we can see that some degrees will take 7 years or more before a typical graduate will break even on their investment in college. The value of students' credentials, it can also be undermined when they have high debt that lowers their return on their investments. In the worst cases, students don't graduate at all. They leave with some college debt and worse off financially than when they first enrolled. As a former Texas University president said, public confidence is the only real endowment of a state university. And today, public confidence is shaken. So how will we boost employers' and students' confidence and renew public trust? Now, a fundamental challenge for us is that our higher education institutions and our systems were designed for different needs and a different time when education beyond a high school diploma wasn't essential for a good job, when the economy didn't demand as many college graduates, so it was acceptable that only about half of our high school graduates enrolled directly in higher education. When higher education was primarily something that students did to advance their standards of living and pursue the American dream, not just maintain. Now consider that general principle. Every system is perfectly engineered to get the results that it does. And from that perspective, it's unlikely that just improving efficiency in our current systems is going to yield dramatically different results. And to be clear, I'm not saying that we can't be more efficient. Of course we can be more efficient. I'm saying that all of our institutions could improve efficiency and productivity and increase their research expenditures, even rise in the rankings. And we could still find that 20th century policies and practices in admissions and financial aid, in operations, instruction, finance, research, and innovation are inadequate to make progress at the speed of 21st century Texas. To make more than incremental progress, we have to be willing to ask deeper questions about the underlying designs of our institutions and our initiatives and our programs. We have to be willing to embrace the changes we need and willing to do the work. So what does that look like? Now, I have a unique vantage point as commissioner, and I have the privilege of leading the only institution, the only entity that's charged to develop and maintain a statewide view of higher education. And still, for all the dramatic changes that we've made at the coordinating board the last few years, it's still the case that the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board today does not enroll a single student. We don't employ a single faculty member, and we don't award a single credential. Our role, our commitment, is to serve as a resource, a partner, and an advocate, especially for Texas students and the institutions where the real work gets done. And every day I'm inspired by examples of higher education leaders who are implementing new approaches, creating new opportunities, transforming lives. And they recognize the need to innovate new models of higher education for 21st century Texas. So let me share just a few examples with you. So right now in Texas, we have multiple institutions that are rapidly expanding their workforce education programs, from semiconductor education programs at Grayson, Collin, Dallas, and Austin community colleges, industry-led petrochem and engineering programs at Del Mar and Lamar State colleges, and of course the continued growth of our high-demand workforce programs through the Texas State Technical Colleges. At the University of Houston downtown, they've expanded support for student basic needs to remove barriers related to food insecurity, housing, and transportation, and keep their students on track. At West Texas A&M, the faculty are developing new associate degrees to be embedded within their bachelor's programs. Here's what that does. So that lets students earn credentials as they hit milestones on the way to their bachelor's degrees, but it also means that the university can engage students who've stopped out or dropped out and transform students from dropouts to graduates overnight. The UT system has partnered with Coursera to launch the nation's largest micro-credential initiative to help students enhance the value of traditional degrees with short-term certificate programs from Google, Salesforce, and other providers. Texas Tech, the University of North Texas, the Texas State University System, and a growing number of other institutions have launched similar partnerships. UNT will even award academic credit for those credentials based on the recommendations of the American Council on Education. And those are just some examples of what doing the work looks like across Texas higher education. So our major challenge isn't a lack of innovation. It's the scale and the speed of the changes that we're called to address for our communities, for our economy, and for our state. It's how to transcend the incremental pace of change that we're used to in higher education and meet the urgency of this moment. And every one of the innovators leading the work that I just mentioned understands this dilemma. So especially as trustees, as chancellors, as presidents, what I hope you'll take away from this conference is a better sense of the opportunities and the challenges that we face, with awareness of some of the new tools, some of the policy innovations and resources at your disposal, and also with inspiration from great examples of Texas higher education programs and leadership. Now the hard work lies ahead to get the results that 21st century Texas already demands today at the scale and speed that we require to stay competitive into the future. By leaning into high quality short-term programs and credentials, not instead of, but in addition to our traditional degree and certificate programs. By expanding opportunities for students to acquire practical, relevant work experience, we can boost students' and employers' confidence and bolster the public's trust. So what if every one of your students had access to short-term credentials and opportunities for meaningful work-based learning experiences? By leveraging your data, including the new tools that we're providing from the state, we can reduce our students' time to credential, reduce their costs, reduce their risks, and restore public trust. What if every one of your students had a clear roadmap from their enrollment to their graduation, and no graduate were to complete with debt that would be too high for their credential. By embracing new collaborations across our institutions, our systems, and our sectors, and that includes post-secondary schools and industry partnerships, we can unlock the potential strength and scale of networks across institutions and across our regional economies with unprecedented 21st century impact. What if we could know? And what if every one of your students could know they're ready to do the next thing at your institution or in a good job, not just because we say so, but because we look? Today, all these things are within our grasp. And I am so proud of what we've already accomplished together. I'm so inspired by the examples of innovative, effective, and committed higher education leadership across the state, including the leaders we have here today. Truly, there is no better place to do this work than 21st century Texas. I want to thank you again for participating in our discussions these last 2 days, for your partnership, and for the work you continue to do for our great state. And I want to say on a personal note, I am so grateful for the opportunity to get up every morning and to do this work, to serve our students, to serve our institutions and our agency as your commissioner. So there's still so much work we have still to do to realize our vision for building a talent-strong Texas. But as I contemplate the work ahead, I'm not just optimistic, I'm confident that by working together, we'll succeed. Safe travels, and may God continue to bless the great state of Texas. Thank you.